This is Retire with Purpose, featuring Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson. Casey is the president of Howard Bailey Financial and is a certified financial planner, leading retirement planning professional, as well as a published author. He is a highly sought-after speaker throughout Northeast Indiana. Marshall is the vice president of Howard Bailey Financial and is also a certified financial planner. He is a trusted voice to families all across the tri-state area. This is Retire with Purpose.
Welcome to Retire with Purpose, the science of retiring with confidence, the art of living with purpose. This is your host, Casey Weed. Joining me, my good friend and co-host, Marshall Johnson.
Hey.
Here to discuss retirement with you. So if you're at retirement, in retirement, near retirement, or you're just seeking a job optional status, you have found yourself a home. We're going to have a wide-ranging discussion today, as we always do. We're going to be talking about long-term care. We're going to be talking about cryptocurrency. We're going to be covering Medicare. And we have a very special guest, best-selling author David McKnight, discussing with us the power of zero, the power of having a 0% tax bracket in retirement. What's that mean? Well, you know what? I want to know what that's all about because I'd love to be in the 0% tax bracket. I bet you do. So stick around here. In just a little bit, we're going to have David share with you some great insights on the power of zero. But before we get to that, we're going to be doing one of our articles from Weekend Reading for Retirees and Pre-Retirees. This is actually an email that we send out every single Friday with 4 articles that we've went out and we've sifted through all the garbage that's out there on the internet to find you 4 articles on retirement trends, the latest in retirement trends that could be in Medicare, Social Security, tax planning, income planning, investment planning, things that are going to affect your bottom line in retirement. If you'd like to stay up on the latest trends, all you have to do is go to retirewithpurpose.com, scroll on down to Weekend Reading, and first name and email will get you that email once a week, every single Friday moving forward. And what we like to do is we like to pick out one of those articles and we like to share that article with you here on the show. And the article we have chosen to kick the show off with this week is an article on long-term care insurance. So get excited. It's kind of like talking about taxes or estate planning, but it's a really important concept. And I put this particular article in here for several reasons. This article comes from Advisor Perspectives. It is titled Evaluating Long-Term Care Insurance. And I put it in here because you've got an advisor that's evaluating long-term care insurance for himself. And very few of these articles on long-term care actually share with you exactly how much you can expect it to cost. Not just the cost of care, but the cost of the coverage itself. What does it cost to have long-term care insurance? What are my options when it comes to long-term care insurance? This article kind of breaks down the risks, the cost of LTC, the cost of coverage itself, the difference between a couple different types of policies, and just gets that engine started so you can start thinking about long-term care. There's also some problems in this article. You know, I don't share articles that I 100% necessarily agree with. We try to stay unbiased as possible here at Howard Bailey. And that means that sometimes we have to share a little bit of our bias as well.
Yeah, sure.
And we're open to that. We understand that we have bias, and our bias is different than other advisors. We're all going to have a different opinion. And I think the beauty of our opportunity here on the radio is to share with you our feelings, our bias, and also point out that of others. We are not arrogant enough to think that we have every answer in the world when it comes to finances, but we think we've got a pretty darn good handle on it, and we can't wait to share this with you. We're going to be talking about this article titled Evaluating Long-Term Care Insurance, and we're going to kick it off with just why this decision on long-term care insurance is one of the most difficult and consequential decisions a retiree will make.
Yeah, it's one of those things that for us, Casey, it's a big risk, right? When we talk about long-term care and the cost, and we start to look at this and go, well, what's the probability that I'm going to actually need care? How long am I going to need care for, and at what cost?
Yeah, it's a difficult decision because there's a lot of different variables that we have to figure out. And I think it's also a difficult decision because very rarely are you going to sit down with an advisor that's going to walk you through all of your options, walk you through every single option and break those down in an easy to understand manner, because
that's the key right
they
there.
are complex. There's a lot of different complex solutions. Some are more complex than others. And you need someone that can, I like to create a spreadsheet myself. myself, when I go through this decision-making process
Of course
with
you
a
do.
client, I like to go down and I want to evaluate all the options. I think one of the problems with this article is they only break down 2 of the options. There's a lot more options than just 2, and there's a lot more carriers than just 2, and we want to look at those side by side. We want to rate those on, well, what about the growth of my investment? Is there a death benefit for my heirs? What's the coverage? Is it limited by a pool? Is it unlimited? What about spousal benefits? Are there discounts? Do the coverage benefits grow over time? We have to evaluate on this decision on a lot of different factors.
Yeah, and it really depends on what a family is looking for. I mean, you made mention there of like death benefit, or do we want to leave something for the other spouse? And I think for each family, that's going to be different. And getting that education about what you just went through, I think is key to this, is really sitting down and analyzing it from your perspective with you and your spouse or your family to say, what are we really looking for out of these tools?
Yeah, and I think some of the probabilities shared here in the article are pretty helpful. I think quite often we hear, well, 70% of people, this is one of the often quoted numbers, 70% of people will need long-term care at some point during their lifetime.
Yeah.
However, we need to scrutinize that number a little bit deeper because it's going to be different for males than it is for females. It's going to be different depending on your age, and it's going to be dependent on the policy you actually pick. Will they pay benefits or out depending on what the elimination period is? So here are just some of the numbers. So 56% of Americans will need at least 1 day of long-term care, but only 32% will actually pay anything out of pocket. That's due to some Medicare coverage that you would have. Among women, 64% will have some nursing home stay. About 50% of men will have a nursing home stay. See, there's a difference between having a long-term care need and a nursing home stay.
Right.
When it comes to long-term care, that could be home health care, assisted living, or nursing home care. And when it comes down to picking out your benefit, one of those questions is, well, how long do I want that benefit to last? What size of pool of benefits do I want or need? And if you look at the averages for women, the average stay in a nursing home for women is 300 days. Average stay for men's about 141 days.
Yeah, about half as much, right?
Yeah, and then there's a probability distribution that I think is important to recognize as well, because you can say, well, on average, women only have 300 days under skilled nursing care. Now, if we look at it on combined genders, in the 50th percentile, 10 days.
10.
That's only 10 days.
10
and that
days.
means Medicare is going to cover that cost. Now, you get out to the 75th percentile, now you're starting to spend your own money. You're using your long-term care benefits, 240 days. But in the 95th percentile, that's 1,495 days that we could spend in a nursing facility. And that could rack up some costs pretty quickly, considering that the average national cost of nursing home care is $102,000 a year.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're talking well over 3 years worth of care there in the 95th percentile. And
almost $400,000 worth of benefits.
Right. But to put that in a percentage term, there's only a 5% probability of collecting that much in benefits.
Yeah. And here's one of the big problems I have with this article. You sometimes look at these probabilities, and this is an investment advisor that probably does his planning using Monte Carlo simulations and goes, hey, we throw it in this portfolio of stocks and bonds, and you pull 4% out a year. Hey, you got about a 95% chance of success. And most people never say, well, what's that 5% chance of failure? Is there any way we can defend against that? Well, the 5% chance of failure in your average investment scenario is retiring at a market peak. Well, there are sometimes higher risks of retiring at a market peak than other times.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, you could say that there is a higher risk that you're retiring at a market peak versus if we were at the bottom of the 2008 financial crisis, March 2009. Well, there was a good chance that 95% chance of success was going to happen, because that 5% chance of failure was pretty unlikely given that the market was so beat up. So I think we've got to keep that in perspective. It's really 0-1, as I've heard another advisor talk about this. Either it happens or it doesn't. Yeah. And if I'm stepping into retirement and they say, well, you got a 5% chance you're broke. Well, that's not something I'm comfortable with. I want a 100% chance that I am never going to run out of money in retirement. I want a 100% chance that if I have a nursing home stay, it's not going to devastate my family's finances and leave my spouse destitute.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an important thing to mention. He does go on and does a little comparison of 2 different types of policies. He calls it a tale of 2 policies, where you got traditional long-term care insurance, the kind of the old standard, and then he uses a hybrid, which is some benefits built on a life insurance chassis.
Yeah, so you've got a traditional long-term care insurance policy. You pay money in, the insurance premium can go up. That's what the author says. One of the biggest risks with traditional long-term care insurance is that those premiums can skyrocket over your lifetime. Now, we've been told that shouldn't happen. However, I'm not all that confident that if there's no cap on my premium, then it's not going to go through the roof someday.
Right.
And then there's hybrid long-term care policies that will pay you a death benefit, also pay out a long-term care benefit. And, the author's conclusion is that he wouldn't buy a long-term care policy because the odds of actually utilizing them are not good enough, basically. He wants better odds. Well, the odds of you needing your car insurance, your homeowner's insurance, those odds are significantly lower than what you're going to experience with a long-term care policy, but you still get the coverage because if I get a car accident, I want to make sure I'm covered.
It's devastating.
Exactly. Yeah. It's devastating. And I also think that the author should have broken down more options. He's just looking at one long-term care policy from one insurance carrier, one hybrid policy from one hybrid carrier. And this isn't a particular policy that we would very often, if ever, use because it's not the best policy to cover a joint life. So for two insureds, we're going to go with a different carrier, but that's the beauty of independence too. We have the ability to shop around and find the very best deal. The author also doesn't explain the option that I use for myself, that Marshall uses for himself, that both of my parents use. We all own life insurance. Mm-hmm. You probably own some life insurance. If you have a life insurance policy, can you use that life insurance death benefit while you're still living? Because a lot of carriers today allow you to get that death benefit while you're living for the use of home health care, assisted living, nursing home care. It's not a long-term care policy like a hybrid is, but it still accelerates death benefits while you're living for that same reason. I also think we should have talked about just investing the money. In all the cases when I'm sitting down talking with a family going, okay, well, let's say we invested that money over time. What would that look like? What type of rate of return do we need in order to match what the policy is doing? And so I think you're ultimately seeing some bias in this article. Mm-hmm. You're not seeing all of your options. You're also hearing from a fee-only advisor that doesn't have the ability to utilize these products in practice in the first place. So of course, if this advisor is saying, hey, I don't think you should buy long-term care, and that option of buying long-term care is going to pull $5,000 a year out of the portfolio he's collecting a fee on, or $100,000 in a lump sum out of that portfolio he's collecting a fee on. He's got to refer that business somewhere else. Then they're probably not going to do that. So I share that with you because you need to recognize the bias. You need to see all your options, and you need to make sure that you're staying on top of all of the latest trends in the financial planning world so you can find the very best solution for your retirement. We're passionate about the belief that you deserve a secure and independent retirement, but that's not going to happen unless you get good consultation. That's why we offer a free consultation to our radio listeners to help keep you on that path. So for the next 10 callers with at least $200,000 saved for retirement, we're going to offer you a free consultation to help you determine how prepared you are to handle retirement pitfalls like inflation, healthcare emergencies, stock market volatility, and taxation. You've worked hard for your money. We'll work just as hard to help you protect and grow it. There's a wide variety of tools and services out there in the financial world. There's more than just one tool. We'll show you how to harness those tools and services to create a plan that's tailored just for you. And we'll show you how to achieve a lifetime of security thanks to a lifetime of income. So for the next 10 callers that call right now at 866-482-9559, we'll work together to get you on the road to financial security and independence. That's 866-482-9559, 866-482-9559. We'll be right back after the short break to talk about cryptocurrency.
You're listening to Retire with Purpose, featuring Howard Bailey Financial's Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson. This is Retire with Purpose, featuring Howard Bailey Financial's Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson.
Welcome back to Retire with Purpose, the science of retiring with confidence, the art of living with purpose. This is your host, Casey Weed, joining me, Marshall Johnson, to answer questions from you. So if you've got questions, if you want answers, all you have to do is go to retirewithpurpose.com. In the bottom right-hand corner of the page, it says, Ask Casey a Question. You're really asking Casey and the rest of the team here at Howard Bailey your question. And if your question is fitting enough, we'll be using it right here on the radio show. Might even make it on over to the TV show. Who knows? Maybe if it's good enough, it'll make it all the way to the Retire with Purpose podcast. Now, if you've got more complex questions, those may require sitting down for a one-on-one consultation. Take us up on the offer we just threw out there to give us a call for a complimentary consultation. Sit down for half an hour to an hour with one of our advisory team members to answer your specific questions. Again, visit retirewithpurpose.com to get your questions answered. Our first question today comes from Kim in Warsaw, Indiana. And Kim says, should cryptocurrency be part of my retirement strategy?
Kimmy, hey, wonderful question. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten this question. To your point, should it be part of my retirement strategy? I don't think it should be part of your retirement strategy. But if you want it to be part of your, I'm going to have fun money, or I'm going to go to Vegas, I'm going to roll the dice, I'm going to buy some penny pot stocks. If you want to roll the dice, that's great, but that shouldn't be part of your retirement strategy. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's very valid, Marshall. When I saw this question, it kind of reminds me of something that Dad said when I was younger, and it was, I was just bragging about a stock that I bought, and this was right after the 2008 financial crisis. I'm picking up all the bank. I mean, I just had a lot of fun with buying Bank of America and JP Morgan and, all these banking institutions, and I was killing it, right? I'm up 30%. I'm up 50% in some of these positions, and I'm bragging to my dad about it, and he's heard enough. At some point he goes, okay, well, what kind of impact is that going to make in your life? And, if I take $500 and I make 100% on $500, I just made $500. I turned $500 into $1,000. That didn't change my life. Didn't make any big impact. That was a huge return too. I mean, we're talking 100%, right? Now, if I would have taken my entire life savings and put it in that one stock, boy, it would have been huge.
Oh yeah, big deal.
But at the same time, the stock could have been cut in half. Could have went worthless for that matter. Especially some of the financial stocks back during the financial crisis. Some of those could have become completely worthless.
Lehman,
and that's the same
Lehman
thing.
Brothers. Yeah.
It's the same thing you're going to see in the cryptocurrency world. Some of these currencies will be completely worthless. And I think you have to recognize that going in. And when you're talking about a retirement strategy, you're typically not talking about taking some high risk, high flying positions with a majority of your assets. If you're going to be doing it, it's going to be a very small portion of your investable assets. We're talking 1-2% of your investable assets. And at that point, I say, what's it matter? Why do you want to concern yourself unless it's just interesting? I know some individuals that just think it's kind of fun to follow this cryptocurrency thing. I'm going to throw some money in there into Bitcoin to see what happens. But in the end, it's not. It can't break your retirement. When you make an investment like this, it can never break your retirement if it goes south, which also means it can never make your retirement either.
Yeah, we're talking about having your core strategy. Once you've taken care of your core and your foundation, then you can go explore with some of those magical things out there.
Well, to me, I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want to think about things that are outside of my biggest impact. And most people aren't going to be able to, make the biggest impact by investing in cryptocurrency. Your biggest impact is going to be with your grandkids, with your spouse, maybe with your employees, with the people you touch every day. Maybe it's the business that you're in. Focus on what really makes a big impact in your life. It's not cryptocurrencies.
Yeah. Great question, though, Kim. Next up, we've got Dexter in Columbia City. Dexter says, hey, Casey, what's the best piece of financial advice you've ever received?
Oh, man.
So many good ones.
Right? Well, there's always, there's two that pop into my mind. And one was from Dad. I mean, it's pretty simple, right? So I may not use this one, but he just hammered it into my head over and over again, just like my grandfather. They just always reiterated the same sentence, and that is, it's not how much money you make, it's about how much you keep.
Yeah.
It's not how much money you make, it's about how much you keep. And my grandfather would share with me what it was like during the Great Depression. My dad would share with me what it was like, losing as much as he did during the tech bubble and then the real estate bubble, the financial crisis, right? It was never about how much money he made. made, it was about how much money he kept, because those losses hurt a lot more than the gains helped. And I think those are the things that we have to keep in mind our entire financial lives. But even when we get into retirement, it's all about consistent saving. It's all about consistent investing. It's always about keeping your eyes on the long term. And we have to avoid losses at all costs. Those are the things that really ruin investors. Some people are trained today to think that, the people that really made it, the entrepreneurs that are super successful, they took really big risks. The really successful entrepreneurs that consistently make it, on average, they took calculated risks. They always knew the worst case scenario and made sure that they never lost everything, that they never took a loss that put them out of the game. And that's what you have to do in retirement. You can take some losses, but you can't take a loss that'll put you out of the game.
Yeah, I love that, because going through 2008, it took losses, though. Your grandfather, Great Depression, your dad, tech bubble, it took those losses to realize that and then teach that to you. And that's, as a father, that's kind of where I go with this question. It's you want to pass along these good habits and these good traits. But for me, one of the best pieces of advice I got was from one of my clients. And he said, focus on spending. If you're going to spend money on making memories and not collecting more stuff. And I think, to me, that I've taken that to heart. And,
you have.
It's about, make memories. Don't buy more stuff. He used a different word.
Well, if you don't know this, Marshall takes his son on trips all the time. I feel like Marshall's traveling with his son somewhere, at least once a month. And if it's not a major trip, they're going to Michigan, they're going to Nashville, they're going somewhere, they're doing something together, they're creating experiences. They're going to a Detroit Lions game, they're going to see the Tigers. I may have got those names wrong because I'm not a sports fan.
Absolutely.
But you're going to the Cubs games, you're going to concerts throughout the week. Like, you are spending money on experiences. You could spend that money and drive a nicer car than a Jeep, but you said, you know what, I'm going to get the Jeep and I'm going to go out and I'm going to spend my money on experiences that our family's never going to forget. And I think that's one of the coolest things about Marshall Johnson.
Hey, thanks, buddy. So that was a great question, Dexter. I could have gone on about liquidity. I think some of the other best advice I got was keep an emergency fund, not just 3 to 6 months, but keep a large emergency fund for opportunities, not just expenses.
And keep it for confidence. Keep it to feel good. I'm going to throw one more in there because the next one's about long-term care anyways. Who cares? So I think we need to answer.
We've talked about that enough.
Well, this is a really good one. So this was quite a while ago. I had the opportunity to sit down with a consultant several years ago. We're sitting down, business consultant, very successful individual, owned a lot of different businesses throughout his lifetime. He said, Casey, what's your number? And I'm a financial planner, right? I'm supposed to think about what my number is.
What's your number?
I thought I had a number, and I gave him, just spouted some number, right? But I'd never really sat down and put together my own plan to know what that number is. And it's not how much money you want, okay? It's how much money you need in order to make sure you have financial independence. And once you reach that number, he said, once you reach that number, you know what that number is, you get to that number, you'll be amazed by what changes in your life. And you have to get to that number as quickly as you possibly can. Once you get there, you'll have a bigger impact in the areas that you can today. That can be, for us, the impact that we make in our clients' lives, the impact we make in our team's lives, the impact we make in the community. That number really unleashes your true potential once you reach it. And if you never know what that number is, you might end up working your life away.
You work
doing
well past the number, right?
And doing things that don't allow you to make your biggest impact, to reach your highest level of potential in life, not in finance.
Yeah.
So our last question comes from Diane in South Bend, and she says, do you get good bang for your buck with long-term care insurance?
Well, that depends on how long you need care for, Diane. If you need, like in the first article, if you need 3.5 years worth of care, you're going to get tremendous bang for your buck. Boom. But I think you're looking at it probably the wrong way. I mean, insurance in general is not typically a best bang for your buck sort of purchase, but at the same time, I think you get better bang for your buck with some of the hybrid products or some of the life products that have long-term care riders, because unfortunately, traditional long-term care insurance has always been use it or lose it.
I agree. I think usually you're going to see that you're going to get more efficient benefits, a more efficient cost structure if you go straight to the source. That's kind of the premise of a lot of our planning. If you want income guarantees, annuities, don't go to the stock market. Go to an annuity. If you want to leave assets behind tax-free to your heirs, you do it in life insurance. You don't do it in the stock market. If you want long-term growth and you're looking for a product that's going to outpace inflation, you go to the stock market. If you want safe money, you go to cash. You go to the place that's common sense. With long-term care insurance, I don't find that necessarily to be the case. With traditional long-term care insurance, when I put that side by side with a hybrid policy, I've been able to price hybrid policies more efficiently than traditional long-term care insurance, only if you're looking at potential price increases in the premium. And that's where I think the bang for your buck, yes, on day one, bang for your buck, probably long-term care insurance over other solutions. However, what if that premium goes up? And that's one of the things that I'm not really comfortable with long-term care insurance, is where that premium might go at some point in the future, because it will absolutely increase over your lifetime. We just don't know how much it's going to increase. I think in the end, I think the bang for your buck in any type of long-term care solution is peace of mind. Can you sleep better at night now knowing that you or your spouse ends up with a major long-term care problem that nobody is going to be left destitute? And there's a price to that. And I'm willing to pay a pretty hefty premium myself to have financial security and be able to live confidently financially. And we want that for you. For the next 10 callers right now with at least $200,000 saved for retirement, we're going to give you the opportunity to have some of that financial confidence. We're going to custom design for you an easy to understand financial review that will indicate if you're in need of a full-blown financial plan. There's no obligation or cost for this initial review. So if you meet those qualifications, here's what you can expect. We're going to run a fee report to help you untangle what it's costing you to work with your current plan or advisor. We're going to do a tax analysis to show you how you could possibly reduce your taxes, increasing your cash flow, and finally create a customized lifetime income plan using proven strategies and techniques that could turbocharge your retirement income. So for the next 10 callers that call right now at 866-482-9559, a comprehensive financial review we're offering with no obligation. That's 866-482-9559, 866-482-9559. Question of the day, it's time to test your financial knowledge. What is the highest historical marginal tax rate in the U.S.? 7%, 1563, or all the way up to 94%? We'll have the answer when we come back.
You're listening to Retire with Purpose, featuring Howard Bailey Financial's Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson. This is Retire with Purpose, featuring Howard Bailey Financial's Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson.
Welcome back to Retire with Purpose, the science of retiring with confidence, the art of living with purpose. This is your host, Casey Weed. Joining me, my good friend and co-host, Marshall Johnson, here with you to talk a little bit about taxes. We've got a very special guest coming up. However, before we get there, I want to give you a good lead-in question. We teed this one up right before the break, and I'll give it back to you here. What is the highest historical marginal tax rate in the United States? Is it 7%, 1563, or all the way up to 94%?
Man, imagine that. I wish it was 7. I wish the answer was A, 7%.
Imagine what you'd do with all that extra cash.
But unfortunately, I know it's D, 94%.
Oof. And it got there pretty quickly. We went from 7% back in 1913. This is how quickly this went up. It went 7%, 7%, 7%. 15, 67%.
Was that just a few years?
5 years later. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're talking 5 years later. Actually, 4 years later, jumping from 7 all the way up to 67%.
Can you imagine that? Hey, we're going to introduce this new federal tax thing. It's not going to be that bad.
No.
And then 5
we're
years
never
later,
going to take more than 7%. Then you got 67. Then in 1944, it jumps up to 94%. There were quite a few years. So we had the highest marginal tax rate above 90%. And I think that raises concern of where taxes might go in the future, considering the highest federal bracket today is 37%, dramatically lower than we've seen in the past, with dramatically more debt today than we've had in the past. And we need to understand that in order to maximize the amount of income we have in retirement. Not just the amount of income, but the amount of spendable income. We focus on the net here, Howard Bailey, not just the gross. We had an amazing guest on the podcast, David McKnight, one of the most well-known tax experts in the country. And if you're not sure what a podcast is, it's on your Apple device. Everybody's got an iPhone, right? If you don't have an iPhone, you can still use one of the other apps out there, Stitcher or something along those lines, Spotify. If you're not sure where to get started, you can go to retirewithpurpose.com and click on the podcast tab. All of our episodes are right there. This is episode number 114 with David McKnight. He is the best-selling author of a book called Power of Zero, The Power of the 0% Tax Bracket. It was the number 2 business book in the world when it was launched back in September of 2018. It sold over 200,000 copies across the world, and it was ultimately turned into one heck of a good movie, if you ask me. The tax train is a-comin'. We're going to share with you a couple of our clips from the podcast so you can get an idea of what the Power of Zero is all about. You've seen them on CNBC. You've seen them on Fox Business. You've seen them in the Wall Street Journal. Now you get to catch him right here on the Retire with Purpose radio show. What is the Power of Zero? And is there really a 0% tax bracket? Let's hear it from David.
Listen, we're not suggesting people not pay tax. We're just suggesting that when given the choice between paying taxes at historically low tax rates or postponing the payment of those taxes till some point much further down the road, mathematically, you're better off paying them today. So that's really all we're saying. We have other people that say, Dave, there's no such thing as a 0% tax bracket. And I say, true. There technically is no such thing as a 0% tax bracket. But if you're living on a lifestyle of, say, $200,000 per year in retirement, and you're not paying a single dime to the IRS, what better way to call it than the 0% tax bracket? Tax-free, 0% tax bracket. I mean, it just has I just really love the way that falls off my lips. 0% tax bracket, there's power in the zero because if tax rates double 2 times 0 is still 0. So I call it the zero even though there's no such thing. It's, if you look at the IRS tax table, it's 10, 12, 22, 24, 32, 35, 37. There's no such thing as a zero. But if you're tax-free, you and I, Casey, we can call it the zero.
Yeah, I think I don't want this to fly under the radar. He said because if tax rates doubled 2 times a year, it's still zero. 0 times 0 is still 0. I think that's an important thing because, and that's part of what we talk about here at Howard Bailey all the time. When we're putting together a plan, we don't worry about the future of tax rates because we're managing the possibility of future tax rates today. If we can get you to a tax-free retirement within 5, 10, 15 years, then we don't have to worry about taxes increasing because we're controlling and locking in the taxes today rather than waiting on Uncle Sam to tell us what we might owe somewhere down the line.
Yeah, and if you look at history, and that's what David touches on next, look at the history, and what does that tell us about where the future of these tax rates is going?
We are experiencing the tax sale of a lifetime. We don't recognize how good it is because we don't often think about how high tax rates were under, during the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. It wasn't until Reagan actually got into office that tax rates started to lower dramatically. But we're in an environment where politicians are talking about raising the marginal tax rate to 70%. I heard Elizabeth Warren talking about raising it to 90% on the wealthiest among us. And the thing you got to remember is when that highest marginal tax rate goes up, historically, it's a bellwether for all of the other tax rates. As that highest marginal tax rate goes up, all of the lower ones tend to rise right along with it. And that's why we keep our eye on that highest marginal tax bracket. So, we have to, I think we've sort of been lulled into this false sense of security that tax rates are low and they'll always be low. Well, history tells a different story.
I think one of the important points there is that it's not just a concern for the wealthiest of Americans. I think we have this concept, this idea, we've been brainwashed to thinking, well, we're just going to raise taxes on the rich. Well, historically, if taxes get raised on the rich, we're going to see taxes increase amongst the remaining population. Depending on their income, you're also going to be paying higher taxes. You don't have to be a centimillionaire, a billionaire in order to see higher taxes. Even today, you don't have have to make much more than a couple $100,000 a year before your taxes start going up pretty darn quickly. And imagine what might happen down the road. What is the definition of rich in the United States? Your definition of wealthy might be a billionaire. The IRS's definition of wealthy might be a millionaire. It might be someone that's making $100,000 a year. So be very cautious of making those types of generalizations. And I think that flows right into our next topic, which is saying, well, in retirement, I won't have as much income. So my taxes can't be higher in retirement. So why should I worry about it? We've always been brainwashed. We've always been told that, well, you're going to have lower income in retirement, so that means that your taxes are going to be less. But that's not necessarily the case, not just because of the tax rate environment we're in today, but the form of your 1040 in retirement. So let's hear it from David on how taxes could be higher in retirement, even if they don't go up.
So all of these major source of deductions vanish into thin air right when you need them the very most, which is retirement. So even if tax rates weren't going to go up, which I think is a mathematical impossibility at this point, all of the deductions that we enjoy during our working years are gone. And the only thing we're left with is a standard deduction, which if you retired today as a married couple is $24,400. So we've got the combination of disappearing deductions plus the likelihood that tax rates are going to go up, which make it nearly impossible for you to be in a lower tax bracket than you are right now in retirement. Having said that, everybody's situation is different. And the real catalyst that should help you understand what you should do in terms of whether you should shift money out of tax deferred to tax-free comes down to what you believe in your heart of hearts about the future of tax rates. That is the single overriding variable when it comes to making these decisions. I happen to think, having examined all of the data and having interviewed most of the major experts on these types of things all across the country, particularly for the movie, I happen to be very, very frightened about the future of tax rates. And that's why I'm so motivated to do the types of things that I'm doing.
I think to add to that, we don't take into consideration, even if you're just looking at your taxes, you may not be taking into consideration Medicare premium penalties, right? If your income is too high, you're going to pay potentially twice the amount for Medicare as your neighbor. What about Social Security taxes? If we can eliminate taxation from your Social Security, then that's going to greatly amplify the amount of net income you're going to have in retirement. And if this is such a big risk for retirees, pre-retirees, if this is such a big concern today, if it's such a great opportunity, then why aren't most financial advisors promoting doing tax-free conversions, paying your taxes today and moving it into a tax-free tool like a Roth IRA?
Yeah, and that's something I talk about in all of my workshops as well. Why do most major financial institutions not want to talk about this? It's because how do they get paid? They charge you a fee. If they're managing $1 million of your dollars and you're charging 1%, they're making $10,000 per year off you. If you were to shift that $1 million to tax-free because you think that tax rates are going to go up, you might pay 25% tax along the way. So now you've got $750,000 sitting in your tax-free bucket. If they're still charging you 1%, now they're only making $7,500 per year off you. They just experienced a pay cut for persuading you that tax rates in the future are going to be higher than they are today. And for that reason alone, the major money management institutions, the Merrill Lynch's, the UBS's of the world, they don't even want to touch this conversation with a 10-foot pole. Casey, you and I, we don't care how much money we're managing. What matters to us is how much people get to spend after tax. That's the only number that matters. And if we can pay a tax today at a lower rate than what it would otherwise be 10 years down the road, then that's good for everybody.
That takes me down the road of, fee-only advisors saying that they don't have conflicts of interest, or fee-based advisors saying they don't have conflicts of interest, or commission-based advisors saying that their conflicts of interest don't matter. I just got done doing some continuing education over the weekend, and one of those questions was, does a fee-only advisor not have any conflicts of interest? Well, the answer is that we always have conflicts of interest. There is no compensation structure that eliminates conflicts of interest. I mean, think about it from the tax play here. Is a fee-only advisor that's only collecting income in the form of fees on your assets ever going to recommend that you take a chunk of those assets away from them today in the form of taxation in order for you to have more spendable income down the road? Probably not. But this is the type of education that we need. And I think this is why it's so important for you to stay educated, for you to understand what's really important when it comes to your financial life. And a big part of that is the net. How much can you possibly net in income in retirement? And that means we need to understand the future of taxes, our options today, and start implementing a plan for the future. For the next 10 people who call us right now with at least $200,000 in the retirement accounts, we're going to do that for you. We're going to offer a complimentary financial review of your entire financial life. There's no cost for this visit. It's simply a chance for you to get an education about your money so that you can make the best decisions for yourself moving forward. We found that most people don't have a true understanding of three basic things. They don't know how much they're paying in fees and commissions. They don't know how much unnecessary risks they're taking with their nest egg, and they darn sure don't understand the tax implications of their retirement savings. We'll sit down with you and help you understand all of those issues. So for the next 10 callers with at least $200,000 saved for retirement, we're going to make some time on our calendar to visit with you and give you this complimentary financial roadmap. Call us right now at 866-482-9559, 866-482-9559. We will walk you through the power of zero. We'll be right back after the short break to cover Medicare for those of you that plan on working past 65.
You're listening to Retire with Purpose, featuring Howard Bailey Financial's Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson. This is Retire with Purpose, featuring Howard Bailey Financial's Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson.
Welcome back to Retire with Purpose, the science of retiring with confidence, the art of living with purpose. This is your host, Casey Weed. Joining me, my good friend and co-host, Marshall Johnson, to talk a little Medicare with y'all. And this is an article we're going to be sharing with you that came from our weekend reading for retirees and pre-retirees. And if you would like to get these articles, all you have to do is go to retirewithpurpose.com, scroll on down to weekend reading for retirees, type in your first name and email, and we will send you out one email every Friday with 4 articles, which are some of the top trending topics in the retirement planning space. This could be things as simple as, well, where are the top places to retire today? Maybe it's on Social Security. Maybe it's on taxation. Maybe, as it is today, it's on Medicare after the age of 65. We also did a podcast on this particular topic. If you want to link to this article, and if you want to listen to the full-length podcast, you can do that at retirewithpurpose.com. Click on the podcast tab and look right there for episode number 115, and you will find a link in the show notes. This article comes from CNBC. It is titled, "If You'll Still Be Working at 65, Here's How to Handle Medicare." Pretty straightforward. And that's why I like this article. I mean, we get this question all the time. Hey, when should I sign up for Medicare? What are the rules? What if I'm going to keep on working past 65? What should I do? This is a question that many retirees have, and it's one that is understandably confusing because, boy, there's a lot of different options. And this is becoming more and more of an issue. As Marshall, you were sharing with me, you just got asked this question a couple times this past week. More and more people are working past age 65. This is what they're calling the new retirementality. Yeah, right. You've got a new attitude towards work and retirement. And, if we're going to be, living, till 90, 95, 100 years old, then maybe we should work a little bit longer. Right. Maybe we enjoy our work and we want to continue to work a little bit longer and just live that job optional lifestyle.
Well, in this article from CNBC, Sarah O'Brien writes in the first sentence here as a key point, by 2026, the share of people ages 65 to 74 in the workforce is projected to reach 30%, up from 17% in 1996. That's nearly double, Casey Weed, from 1996 to 2026.
You telling me all these boomers are taking our jobs?
Boomers are taking jobs. Well, I hear it a lot. Especially a lot of ladies in our office that are saying, you know what? It's the social aspect. Their husbands are kind of boring, want to sit at home or play golf all day, but these ladies need that social interaction, so they go to work for fun.
Yeah, well, that is one of the biggest things that individuals get out of work is the social aspect of the work environment. Don't take that stuff for granted. I think, more astounding for me is this 75 and up crowd, and I would like to see this in the 75 to 85 age group. The statistics shared here are 75 and older, and 75 and older in 2026, it's projected to have 11% of the workforce is expected to be 75 and older. That's a pretty big number.
That's amazing.
I wonder if it's more like 20% if we look at 75 to 85. My grandfather worked into his late 80s and still does a little bit of work from time to time in his 90s, and that's up from just 4% of the workforce in 1996.
4.5% in 1996.
Yeah, so this is becoming a bigger and bigger deal, and there are some rules that we need to understand if we're going to continue to work past 65. We have to understand our choices, and it depends on whether you're with a small company or a big company. If you don't understand the rules, you could face some pretty stiff penalties that stick with you the rest of your life. You can't eliminate those things. Workers at companies that have fewer than 20 workers, most of the time they have to sign up for Medicare at age 65.
Yeah, you're kind of forced to do it.
But if it's a larger company, over 20 employees, typically you have choices. And I think that's where most people are going to be working. That's where most of the confusion is going to come from as well. You can either stick with your group plan and delay Medicare without facing any penalties down the road, or you can drop the company option in favor of using Medicare, or you can do a combination of the two. It's like, wait, you mean I can keep my existing coverage, I can get Medicare, or I can just keep both of them? Why wouldn't I just do both? And I think the bottom line here is running the numbers. And I think this is probably one of my top frustrations on a daily basis with the financial world is, people just don't want to run the numbers. They don't want to take the time, whether it's clients, whether it's advisors. Most people just don't want to run the actual numbers. They just want somebody to say, you should probably just get Medicare Advantage. You should probably just get a Part D plan. Get this Medicare supplement plan. It worked for me. We have to actually run the numbers. Think about pensions today, right? You get a lump sum pension option. Did your advisor run the numbers or just say, oh, we can do better than this? Look at how much money we made last year. Why don't we go ahead and roll it over? You'll have more control over the money and, we'll be able to satisfy the income need, I think. That is not running the numbers. So when it comes to this decision, I just want you to run the numbers. And that means knowing exactly what it's going to cost you. What is it going to cost you if you stay on your plan, if you use a combination of the two, if you go with Medicare, what are the results? So the article also shares with us some of the basics and what those costs are.
Yeah, talking about, the basics, really there's Part A covers the hospital coverage, Part B, outpatient covers the docs.
Yeah, and we have to know our window, and sometimes we go, well, at 65, I can sign up for Medicare. Well, actually that window starts 3 months before your 65th birthday month. So you have a 7-month window. You have 3 months before that month. You have 3 months after that month. And if you don't sign up when you're eligible and you don't meet an exception, you could face some very stiff late enrollment penalties. And one of those exceptions, for instance, is a group plan through a larger employer. So if you have a group plan through a large employer, that's one of those exceptions so that you don't have to worry about those late enrollment penalties.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one thing that people are scared about. It's like, hey, I'm still working. Should I have done this? Should I have signed up? Know these rules because once you have this penalty, it's a big deal.
And I think one of the things you have to watch out for is some people will go ahead and sign up for Part A, even if they plan on staying on their employer's plan, because they go, well, it's free. As long as you have a 10-year work history where you've contributed to the program through payroll taxes, then you can go ahead and sign up for Part A. It doesn't cost anything, and you go, I'm going to go ahead and sign up. However, if you happen to have a health savings account, an HSA with a high deductible plan, now you can't make contributions to that HSA anymore. And that HSA is money. If you have an HSA, you can take a deduction. It grows tax-free as long as you use it for healthcare expenses down the road. So I wouldn't want you to sign up for Part A if you're still have access to an HSA. And then what's it cost? Okay, so you've got Part A. You paid for that through your payroll taxes during your working life. Part B, in 2020, it's got a standard monthly premium of $144.60. However, due to IRMA, income-related monthly adjustment amounts.
Oh, IRMA.
Yeah, Irma's a real pain in the you-know-what.
That's
because that can mean a pretty substantial increase in premiums. Your premium could go from $144 a month all the way up to $490 a month once you factor in premium penalties because you just made too much darn money. You're supposed to be retired. The same problem you're going to find with Part D. With Part D, average premium is about $30. However, that premium could go up to over $70 if you make too much darn money. And that adjustment, that income penalty, that income-related monthly adjustment amount, that penalty on your Medicare is based on your income from 2 years earlier. In other words, your 2018 income is used for your 2020 premiums. However, if it's a life-changing event, say you're stepping into retirement, you can fill out a form, and there's a link to that form in this article. If you want that link, all you have to do is go to retirewithpurpose.com, go in the podcast tab, episode 115, and you'll get a link to that form that allows you to get exempt from those premium increases when you apply to Medicare.
All right, so you got to understand the basics. You got to run the numbers, but then it's also a little bit different if you're with a big company or a small company.
Yeah, if you're working with a big company, you can delay signing up for Medicare until you lose your group insurance. And they define a big company as at least 20 employees. And everyone's situation is different. However, there's a really good chance your current insurance through work is the most cost-effective option.
Right.
That typically is the most cost-effective option, is to go ahead and stay that way. However, if you stay with your current coverage and delay all or parts of Medicare, you have to make sure that plan is considered credible. And your insurance company, your HR department can tell you if that is a creditable coverage for both parts B and D, so you don't get stuck with a penalty somewhere down the line. If you're just an average Joe, maybe you go to therapy once a week or something, costs you $40, might be cheaper to go on Medicare and get a supplement. However, if you take a specialty drug, a really expensive specialty drug is quite often where people get in trouble with Medicare costs because Part D does not have a cap on the amount of out-of-pocket expenses.
Right.
So if you take a really expensive specialty drug, you might want to stay on your employer's plan in all likelihood. Then we've got small businesses. So if you're a small business, you're working with a company under 20 employees, you must sign up for Medicare regardless of whether you stay on that plan or not. And that can be a real bummer sometimes if you've got a great plan. But most of the time, smaller employers aren't covering nearly as much as the premium as a larger employer. For example, at small firms, 35% are in a plan that require them to contribute more than half of the premium for family coverage, compared with just 6% of those covered at larger firms. So typically, you're going to be better off at those larger companies. Those larger businesses are going to provide better healthcare coverage, which is why it typically makes more sense for you to go ahead and stay on that employer's coverage rather than having going ahead and getting Medicare, or even using Medicare as a backup plan.
Yeah, because a lot of times when you're with that employer, Medicare becomes the primary coverage as opposed to more of a supplemental. And that's what's going to change the coverage.
Now, if you find this confusing, and you want to get answers to your unique situation, and you also want to integrate it as part of a comprehensive financial plan, integrate it with your Social Security decision, your tax planning decision, your investment management, your investment allocations, then give us a call right now. For the next 10 callers with at least $200,000 saved for retirement, we're going to custom design for you an easy-to-understand financial review that will indicate if you're in need of a full-blown financial plan. There's no obligation or cost for this initial review. So if you meet those qualifications, here's what you can expect. First, we're going to run a fee report to help you untangle what it's costing you to work with your current planner or advisor to see if we can keep more of your money in your pockets. Next, we'll perform a tax analysis to show you how you could possibly reduce your taxes and increase that net income. And finally, we'll create a customized lifetime income plan to give you the confidence to spend in retirement. In short, we'll take the guesswork out of financial planning for you. So for the next 10 callers that call right now, 866-482-9559, a comprehensive financial review we're offering with no obligation. That number's 866-482-9559, 866-482-9559. I cannot wait to catch you right back here next week on the Retire with Purpose Radio Hour.
You've been listening to Retire with Purpose, featuring Howard Bailey Financial's Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson. Investment advisory services may be offered through Howard Bailey Securities, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Certified Financial Planner Board of Standards, Inc. owns the certification mark CFP and Certified Financial Planner in the U.S., which it awards to individuals who successfully complete CFP Board's initial and ongoing certification requirements. Howard Bailey Financial is a registered trademark of Howard Bailey Financial. All rights reserved. Information is not intended to provide specific legal or tax advice. Howard Bailey Financial nor its advisors are qualified to give tax or legal advice. You are encouraged to consult with your tax or legal professional for guidance on your individual situation. This radio show is a paid placement.